Hello, everybody. Today is January 20th, 2024. I am going to be doing block three of the advanced block that we chose, which was the Missouri puzzle for the sampler sew along that we are doing with at Rita's Roost, at Mona Didwet, and Rowena. Generally, I do not do a tutorial for the advanced block, but this came at a request by Linda. And I'm going to be honest, I had a few challenges, as I've mentioned many times before, that I have not been quilting for that long. I've only been quilting for 3 years. And so there are still many things that I have to learn and that I personally struggle with. And one of the items that I struggled with was the advanced block. As many times as I tried it and attempted to do it, I could not get the correct measurements to get that quilt or that block completed. And it came out very, very wonky. So, what I decided to do was go ahead and write out the pattern for it so that I could both verbally share it with you, give sizes, and also be able to share a link where you can get the downloaded pattern if you need it. Now, for many of you, it's not the original pattern that we shared is not going to be an issue. For me, it was, and I think my brain just could not handle the directions and the conversions. Um, so the pattern that I made is this, and it does come from my EQ8 with some adjustments. And if you just bear with me one moment, I am going to share what that looks like what you will receive. So the pattern will look like this. And as I've stated, I will share that link in my community profile. So we do have the pattern if you need it. I will be giving cutting instructions per my pattern. I'm not legally able to give cutting instructions for the pattern that we chose, which was the Missouri puzzle block by Delaware Quilts. So these are my cutting instructions. There are adjustments made to it. I utilize two fat quarters, and if you cut sparingly and carefully, you can actually make two blocks out of the fat quarters. Okay, you will need a ruler, your rotary cutter. Pins are very, very helpful, and jack. And I can tell you that I did use jack. So I've already cut out my strips, and unlike my basic block tutorials, I am not going to be sewing these for you. I will show you the steps as I've sewn them, and we can go from there. But I do have my blocks cut out, and as promised, I'm going to give you sizes. So for your dark print, you will need 6 3.5 squares, 5 3-inch squares, 2 strips of a 1 3/8 by 14-inch strip, one strip of 1 3/8 by 7-inch strip, and a 1 3/8 by 13-inch strip. And for beginners who want to try this out, if I can point this out to you, right at your 1/4 inch line, the line between the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch is your 3/8. And you want to be careful to cut that down to that measurement. If you go bigger on these, your little patchwork blocks, the 9, this block here will come out really wonky and will not fit or nest well in between your inner block. So you just want to be careful. If you have to, you can go ahead and mark that line with painter's tape or anything that will not leave an adhesive residue. You can also do the Sharpie trick where you mark it with your Sharpie on the top side of your ruler, not touching the fabric, because you do not want any of that ink touching the bottom of it, because it will drag off on your material, on your fabric. Okay. For your light color strips, you will need 6 3.5-inch squares, 1 3/8 by 1 3 3/8. I apologize. That's 1 inch and 3/8 by 14-inch strip, 1 3/8 by 7-inch strip. You'll need 2 of those. 1 3/8 by 13-inch strips, and you'll need 2 of those. And I've only cut them down in units because it's easier to handle. And the longer your strips are when you're trying to piece them together, your stitch seam, sometimes it goes in and out and curves, because either you're not paying attention, you went too fast, or just a whole bunch of things could happen. So by cutting them down in smaller units, it's easier to work with, and you'll be able to get your cuts. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our 3.5-inch fabric A, and we are going to take our 3.5-inch fabric B. We are going to make half square triangles, and those measurements are going to, the finished measurement is going to be 3 inches. Okay, so what I've done is I went ahead and took those 3.5 units, the dark and the light fabric, went ahead and made the line across the diagonal and sewed a 1/4 inch seam on either side of that diagonal line. Now, if you're able to take a scant 1/4 inch, it works a little better, but a 1/4 inch will work fine. And you're going to want to make 12 units. So once you've made your 12 units, you're just going to set that aside, and we are going to work on the next step, which is we are taking 2 strips of the D block and 1 strip of the F block, and we are going to sew those together just like that. Okay, so we've taken that unit that we just sewed together, and we are going to subcut that unit to 8 1 3/8 units. So 1 3/8, and we're making 8 of them. We're going to set them aside for now. And then we're going to continue on to the next step, which is to take your G and your E fabric, which is the 7-inch. We are going to do the same thing. Go ahead and sew those units together. And this one we're going to subcut into 4 units at 1 3/8. All right, so we have subcut our units into 4 units, subcut our strips into 4 units. What we're going to do at this point is we are going to take one of these strips and we are going to sew them together where they look like that, like this. So you're going to make 4 units. And at this stage, you might want to go ahead and pin because it's a small piece while you're running it under the sewing machine. All right, so I have sewn my units together and I have trimmed my unit to 3 inches. I did set my seams and gave it a good press. If you utilize a clapper, you can go ahead and use a clapper to get that all nice and flat before you trim it up to 3 inches. And then we are just going to set that aside. And I think I said that you're going to make 4 of those units. So then we are going to move to our final strip stage by taking our eye strips and our H strip. We are going to do the same thing. The only difference is on this one, we are going to subcut the units to 3 inches. So you will end up with 4 units of 3-inch squares. All right, so I have my units, my 4 units cut and squared. I will, just a little tip, when you're squaring it, try and take an even amount off of each end. And that way you don't have a shortage, too much of a shortage on one side. And when you go to nest your seams, it will work out better. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I am going to pause this video and I am going to sew up the rest of my blocks and we'll be able to lay it out. All right, so I have all my units sewn together, cut and trimmed, and now we are going to build out the block, starting with my corners. Now this block will look the same in any direction that you go. And we're just going to follow the layout on the screen or on the pattern. And at this point, it does not matter which way you turn this because it is exactly 3 inches. We do want to pay attention to where we are placing this unit here. So I'm just placing my units down. And at this point, we just want to make certain everything is correct with our corner units, the dark fabric facing out, and then the inner units touching our solid blocks and our intersections going this way. And let's see if I can scoot this over just a bit so you can see it. Scooting it over. Take a quick look in the camera and make sure everything looks correct. And it does. So at this point, we are just going to sew row by row. We are going to flip. And so this row, this row, this row, this row, this row, and connect the rows. We'll go ahead and do that now. All right, I have my rows sewn together and I went ahead and pressed the seams alternating. So I pressed one row to the right, one row to the left, and so on. And that is so when we turn it over to sew our rows together, it will nest nice and straight. And we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I have sewn my block together, all my rows together. I have given it a good press and I have trimmed it to size, making certain that I am at least a quarter of an inch away from my point. So when I sew my blocks together, I will retain my points. As I mentioned, if you are using two fat quarters and you cut sparingly, you can get two blocks. However, the blocks are going to be inverted. So you are going to get a block with the white being your dark fabric and the dark being your light fabric, and one as the pattern states. And when you place the blocks together, you will get the added bonus of a pinwheel block going through it. So you can use whatever color you want. I would suggest that you not use fabric that is very, very spacious, spacious, big, because you will end up with something that looks like that, which is just, we don't even know what's going on here. But this was my practice vlog when I was making up the pattern. So something that reads a little solid, or something where the fabric, the print on the fabric is a little tighter, will work best. And but there you go. Like I said, I will have the link for the Google Doc pattern on my community page posted later today. Um, take your time. I hope you enjoy it. I hope this makes this block a little easier as far as the instructions go. If you have any questions or you have a comment, please leave them in the comment section. As always, I hope you are blessed. Be kind and keep sewing. Thank you. See you next time.